young scallywag.
Wow, what is all this?
Ah, this is all the stuff we've taken from all the lost ships.
How did you get it?
Well, we travelled around on the ghost ship Eurydice.
The Eurydice. In the 1930s, Commander Lipscomb was aboard a Royal Navy submarine around the Isle of Wight when suddenly a large three-masted ship appeared as if from nowhere. In the panic, the submarine was ordered to make a sudden drastic change of course. And on second inspection to try and identify the imposing vessel, Commander Lipscomb was in shock to learn it had entirely vanished. What made the encounter even more peculiar was that the ship was a full-rigged ship, the type that was rarely seen around the Isle of Wight during the interwar period. On Lipscomb's description of the phantom vessel, some men commented how similar the ship's description sounded to the ill-fated ship Eurydice, but with one unnerving fact: the Eurydice had sunk in 1878. The loss of Eurydice was known as one of the worst peacetime naval disasters. The vessel was recorded as being a 6th-rate wooden frigate of the old class. It was in service between 1843 to 1861, having been briefly sent to the White Sea during the Crimean War, before being converted into a training ship, fitted and reconstructed at the Portsmouth Dockyard and then John White's Yard at Cowes. It was placed under the command of Captain Hare and continued to travel, having completed a successful cruise to the West Indies. Then, on a fateful March afternoon, reports came flying in of a ship in grave distress. The Eurydice had been spotted caught in a great snowstorm just off of Dunners, Isle of Wight, and eventually sunk in Sandon Bay. Right before the tragedy, and around 70 miles away from it, an eerie vision of the sinking is said to have overcome a man in Windsor. Sir John McNeill was sat with the Bishop of Ripon when suddenly he's said to have cried out, "Good heavens! Why don't they close the portholes and reef the sails?" After the bishop calmed McNeill, the latter shared he had just had a sudden vision of a ship sailing into a squall, otherwise known as a localised storm, with its gun ports wide open. This bears a chilling similarity to how the Eurydice was engulfed by a storm merely hours later. The poem by Gerard Manley Hopkins even quotes how there was death teeming in the ship's portholes. Tragically, there were over 300 souls on board, yet only 5 were picked up by the local schooner Emma, which was bound for Poole, and of those 5 rescued, only 2 survived. Yet, since the vessel's sinking, there are believed to have been many sightings of the ghostly 3-masted ship. Again, what some may call either a bizarre coincidence or an eerie prediction. The ship shares the name Eurydice with a character in Greek mythology, who at one point returns from the land of the dead to the living. In the ancient legend of Orpheus and Eurydice, the character of Eurydice is killed by a viper bite. Distraught by her death, her husband Orpheus travels to the underworld to retrieve her, and sings a song convincing god of the underworld Hades to take her back to the living. Could the Eurydice ship also bridge the world of the living and the dead? There have been several other sightings, often at Dunners Point. Perhaps the most notable was when Prince Edward was presenting a documentary called Crown and Country. And whilst he was filming and discussing the Eurydice, the film crew spotted a 3-masted ship on the horizon. However, shortly after, the ship had entirely vanished, and when the film was played back, part of it was mysteriously destroyed. After the tragedy, the vessel has been referred to in lots of poems, including the previously mentioned poem by Gerard Manley Hopkins and another by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. So, the legend of Eurydice still lives on. But do you still believe the ship still travels around the Isle of Wight?
There isn't any ghost ship.
What? Oi! On guard! There's plenty of other ghost ships.
The SV Madagascar. In the mid-19th century, the British population had a higher percentage of females than males, an imbalance which was largely due to the emigration of men. In an attempt to rectify this, the Right Honourable Sidney Herbert proposed a national fund to help the emigration of some women to places like Australia, which at that point had a larger male population. The ship of choice to carry these women was the SV Madagascar. The Madagascar was a Blackwall frigate and was launched in 1837. It was a three-masted, full-rigged ship and was a merchant ship. Around the time of the Australian gold rush, it had been transferred to the Australian trade, and under the command of Fortescue William Harris, in March 1853, the Madagascar left Britain carrying 49 women emigrants to Phillip Bay on the coast of Australia. The journey to Phillip Bay, near Melbourne, was a relatively uneventful 87 days. Yet, when the Madagascar arrived, 14 of the crew jumped ship. Of the 14 crew missing, only 3 positions were replaced. Then the vessel was loaded with cargo. That included wool, rice, and gold valued at £240,000, which in today's money is roughly £31 million. 110 passengers were also boarded, and the ship was ready to leave. However, at this point, the ship's luck began to turn. Just as the vessel was ready to sail, a man on board was arrested for robbery, and shortly after, 2 more men were apprehended by police. This subsequently delayed the ship's departure until August 12, 1853, when the Madagascar finally left Melbourne. Yet, unbeknownst to those on board, this was just the beginning of the troubles. For once the Madagascar left Port Phillip, it was never seen again. The exact number of lives lost is still uncertain, but it is believed that there were 60 crew and 110 passengers who vanished. After the ship failed to arrive, many speculated on what had happened. Had the woolen cargo combusted? Had the ship hit an iceberg? Or was the £240,000 stolen, the passengers murdered, and the ship scuttled? The latter theory gained some traction when, just 20 years later, rumours circulated of a sailor's deathbed confession, in which he claimed he knew who had murdered the captain of the Madagascar. This story was then used in many fictional accounts of the Madagascar's fate. But regarding the ship's true resting place, an answer may never be found.
Wow, I had no idea that ghost ships were real.
Of course they are. They're as real as I am. But keep your eyes peeled. That might not be the last you hear of Eurydice and Madagascar.
Thanks, Pirate McPieface. This has been really weird.
You're welcome, Matilda.
Matilda! What happened? Well, wake up. Let's go home. And tell me everything.